We've got 4 individuals who are going to be running this panel called Green Action Planning Panel. They'll be discussing best practices within sustainability and how to maximise your green impact. So if I can invite to the stage Diane Roberts, Project Manager from Staffordshire Business and Environment Network. Welcome. Come and take us. There is. We've got a great turnout. Gary Jones, CEO of Support Staffordshire. Tom Bedford, the Place-Based Decarbonation Manager for Globe Group. And chairing this conversation will be Karen Woolley, who's the Staffordshire and West Midlands Development Manager for the Federation of Small Businesses. Thank you.
We can share this one.
We can share this one, right, okay, then if I move that over there we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session. Lovely to see you all here. So I think what we're going to start off doing, as you've heard, I'm Karen Woolley, the Development Manager for Staffordshire and the West Midlands for the Federation of Small Businesses. Some of you may wonder, why are the FSB here? And I will go into a bit more detail later, but clearly, you know, for small businesses, this is a huge issue. There's a desire to do the right thing and to move into the green and net zero agendas and sustainability. Quite difficult if you're a very small business, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So actually, I'm going to invite each of the panel to introduce themselves. Can I start with Tom?
Yes, I'll squeeze this over and hopefully this works well here, swap in between us. So I'm Tom Bedford. Thank you so much for joining us here today at the Staffordshire, the Midlands Climate Expo. Now we've expanded. I am the Place-Based Decarbonisation Manager at the Globe Group, the group that is running today. And I complete our work around carbon literacy training, but also specifically green action planning and thinking how organisations can take the steps towards decarbonisation. Because obviously it's a bit of a minefield out there at the moment in terms of where we start and where to go, and it's helping unpack some of those challenges. And alongside that, I also do some research into decarbonisation specifically in the Midlands area.
Perfect, thank you very much. Now, Gary, over to you.
Thanks. Gary Jones, I'm Chief Exec of Support Staffordshire. Support Staffordshire is a voluntary community social enterprise sector support organisation. We're a membership organisation. We give advice to individuals, small groups of people who want to start something up in their community, right up through to some of the larger charities, social enterprises. And increasingly that advice and support is touching upon climate action, climate emergency work.
Perfect, thank you very much. And Diane, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Diane Roberts. I'm based with Staffordshire County Council in the Environmental Business Support Team, but I'm here today as the manager of Staffordshire Business Environment Network. We're a network that has been established over 30 years in Staffordshire, with over 480 members now, and here to support businesses across Staffordshire on their journey to net zero and making environmental improvements.
Perfect, thank you very much. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with a couple of sort of general questions that I'd like to ask the panel, which might help to set the scene for the work that they're doing in this arena. So organisations are starting to prioritise climate action, and we've seen an 87% increase in the number of organisations using science-based emissions reduction targets, but often organisations don't know where to start. So given this, what first steps could an organisation take to help them on that journey? And can I come to you first, Tom?
Of course. And I think I want to start with a really clear message to begin with around climate action, building on that science-based targets that we've been talking about. And it's actually that everyone in this room, as individuals, organisations and areas, need to cut our emissions in half by 2030 from 2020 levels. And that's the first thing that we all need to think about. Actually, the reality of where we need to go, there's a lot to do. And at Globe, we try and help organisations understand what works for them on that pathway as well. Because each of us are in different places, have different situations and different challenges which we need to deal with. So at Globe, what we do is we try to help people understand their carbon emissions, energy usage, water, along with other key areas of environmental impact, and help really target impact areas for you. Because some of you will have big energy consumption, some of you have big water consumption. And there'll be discrepancies between each one of you in terms of actually what is the most important thing to do. And what we try and do is create a portfolio of options available. So we've recently been doing some work with Burton Albion Community Trust and the football club there as well, and helping them really understand what are the challenges which are specific to them. Because if we each see decarbonisation and net zero in the same way, we might not get the best solutions for us. And instead, what we can do is think about some of those specific things which will work in your organisation. So for some of you, smart energy solutions might be a perfect way forward. But actually, some of you might find that there's blockages within your organisation. It might be your organisation, your building leasing structure, for example. Do you own it? Do you rent the building? And that could put blocks in the way. And actually, what we need to start thinking about is the steps that work for us individually to build some of the action that's going forward. And most importantly, find out what those winning solutions are to start with. What are those things that we can start doing to build that momentum and build that low carbon culture around this? Because then things start to domino. So getting things started in a way that works for you is the most important part of all of this. But two things that everyone in this room should definitely be thinking about moving forward is ensuring your staff understand the challenge and are educated on the topic of climate change. Because it's not just people who are sustainability managers, energy managers, it's all of us that need to have a responsibility within this. And the other thing is work with others, because actually we're never going to achieve these deep decarbonisation goals that we want to on our own. We have to do things collectively, and it's only using the expertise and knowledge in this room and the other rooms that we all work in to get there.
Okay, thank you very much. Gary?
So we work with organisations that are, I sometimes describe it, starting as kind of one man or one woman and their dog size, right up to organisations that employ lots and lots of people. But over half of our member organisations don't employ anyone. They're completely volunteer run. And earlier this year, as part of our biannual State of the Sector survey, we asked a question around, are you taking specific action on? And we asked a few different things, but one of them was the climate emergency. And somewhat disappointingly, only 10% said yes to that question. And I don't think that is an indication that people don't care about it as an issue. I'm quite optimistic that people do care about it. I think it's people find it a really big challenge and they find it really confusing. And if you look around downstairs, it's packed downstairs full of people who are really, really intelligent and clever and understand this stuff, but it is really complicated for people. And a lot of the community groups that we work with, their primary purpose isn't this, it's something else, and it's often something that's much more urgent and much more immediate. Homelessness, cost of living. It can be something environmental, but it's often something that feels much more immediate to their community. So our advice probably starts on a much more kind of basic level. Forget all those experts, forget all of that. We can come to that at a later date. But if you just want to get started, I would say just do a shout out within your own organisation and just get a few people together who have got an interest in this. You don't need to have a grand plan just to start building those bridges within the small organisation. So that's kind of what we did as an organisation. We just got a few people together to talk about it, and people's individual interests and passions then start to come through in the conversation. I would say step 2 would be, once you've got that group talking together, take up, Globe have got a very good offer on this, and we've worked collaboratively with them. Take up some of the training. It's often very low cost. Sometimes it's free. SBEN as well have a really good training offer around this to get that group of people together so that they start as a kind of level playing field, as some basic kind of carbon literacy knowledge. And I think, a kind of group who have got a bit of solidarity together, a bit of basic training, then you can start thinking about kind of basic action plan of 2 or 3 things that you can start doing in your organisation. But I would almost try not to scare people off by the huge complexity of it to begin with.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Diane, over to you.
Well, I've written don't panic. I'm not sure if that was a message to myself about sitting up here or a message to you. But no, I think there is a message in there for you that a lot of people, there's a lot of climate anxiety. Is there anything we can do? Will it make a difference? And then they bury their heads in the sand and it drops down the priority list and nothing happens. So, I think my message would be there is so much help and support available from SBEN, from Globe, from Support Staffordshire. Come and talk to one of us or all of us and start gathering the information that's available to you. So much of it is free at the moment, so take advantage of that while it is there and while it is free. Book on some carbon literacy training. We've got free energy audits for businesses available at the moment. So that's a great starting point to start looking at the basics. Look at your energy bill, see what that energy is being spent on, and then you can start to look at what you can do about it. That adds to.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go to another question now, and then we'll delve into a bit more in the specifics. So over the last few years, we've had an amazing surge of initiatives around climate action, coupled with a lot of new tools, but we can easily fall into the trap of carbon tunnel vision or just get lost in the amount of complexity, as we've already heard, that's involved with that. But what advice do you have for organisations to help them overcome these challenges and maximise their positive impact? I know we've heard about, sort of getting the free advice and channeling all of that, but is there anything specific or anything sectorially based that you could talk about? And I'll go to you first, if I may, Tom.
I think the most important thing too is actually to look around and see what's going on. I think Gary has made a really good point there, actually, in the challenges that exist across our organisations and seeing what energy there is. Because when you go and look into your organisations, a lot of the time you see there's things going on there already. They might not explicitly be called climate change or energy action or sustainability, but actually people are already thinking about these challenges in a bit of a different way. And it's thinking, how can we bring other parts of the climate challenge to that too? So if you're thinking about social justice, obviously climate change is going to have a huge connection to that. If you're thinking about energy poverty, again, huge connection in terms of what can be done. But also actually for organisations, there's an opportunity here to save lots of money as we think about decarbonisation through smart energy solutions, through thinking about integration with other areas. And one of the most important things that I think in all of this is that we move beyond the siloed approach to working that we've done for so long and actually think, how can we connect the dots across our organisations? How can we think in systems, as I like to call it? So what's going on here and how does it connect to here? How do we ensure the impact in this area doesn't have a negative impact elsewhere? How do we balance what's going on? But that's not just internally, that's also externally. What are the other things that are going on in the area? So, for example, Diane has already mentioned some of the amazing projects that are going on with SBEN. Actually, can you grab on some of those things and help push things forward? Because thinking about the projects out there at the moment are the most important part of this. And I think it can also stop us going down some of the wrong paths as well. One of the big things that we see at Globe is people coming to us saying, we want to do net zero, we're thinking about net zero, we're going to get there. And this is all sorts of sectors, not just business. And the way they do it is just through carbon offsetting. But when we look at the reality of it, that's actually not the most effective thing to do. And we know that we need to have a real mix of reducing our emissions along as well as sequestering carbon where possible. But that's also not necessarily the cheapest solution. And there's other things that you can do which will benefit your organisation as we go through this. So really starting to unpack some of the things that can go on there and where some of the synergies exist. And I think an example of thinking about that really clearly is some work that we've been doing with Staffordshire Community Energy, which some of you I'm sure will be familiar with already as a community energy company. And we've been supporting them with some of their initiatives in the local area. And they think about decarbonisation and putting energy on buildings, but actually that's not the focal point of what they're doing. Decarbonisation is just one part of their agenda. What they do on the side of that is any money that they make from renewable energy, they invest in the local community. So they release community share offers, and any profit that's generated goes to support the local area. So they've got a project in Stoke, for example, with Beat the Cold, where they support action on fuel poverty, and that's supporting the NHS and thinking about all these overlaps that go across the local area. So really thinking about where those interconnections exist are and making sure that we don't just have a climate conversation or a net zero conversation, because it's easy to get distracted and drawn into that hole when actually there's action across the whole spectrum already going on, and we can just bring more things together and drive change forward that way.
Perfect, thank you very much. And Gary?
Well, I don't have a huge amount to add to that. I think that's a great answer. I would definitely say when you're feeling a bit lost in it, looking across both within your organisation but also to some of your neighbouring organisations, I think that can really help. So particularly if you're a small voluntary organisation that is based somewhere that has a premises, quite a lot of people are co-located. So there's the Dudson Centre in Stoke. I can see some colleagues over there. There's a few other sort of hubs like that across the county. I think having those conversations with your peers and with others that are in the same sort of space, particularly as a small voluntary organisation, is really useful. And there's things you can do collaboratively together. If you're in a very small organisation, you might find that you're the only one, or feel like you're the only one that's bothered about it. So finding an ally in a kind of neighbouring organisation can be really important. Endorse everything Tom said. The only other thing I would just add is, I think there's a little bit of kind of pragmatism in it as well. So for us, there was an individual who was particularly interested in the kind of nature side of stuff, and sharing her passion and love for nature really helped to bring other colleagues on board. There's another individual who works for us who's really into his bikes and in cycling, and enabling him to share that kind of passion and interest with colleagues and getting others who hadn't been on a bike for 20 years really helped. They're not necessarily the things that are going to reduce the carbon the most, but if it's where the passion and the interest lies, to some degree, I would say kind of just go with it, go with that flow within your organisation.
Thank you. Actually, the bike thing, I haven't been on one since I was 11 when I fell off, so maybe I ought to have a chat with them. And Diane, over to you.
Again, it's difficult to add to the advice there. Maybe it's more of a summary. I've got collaborate and engage with lots of people. A key person in your organisation is going to be the finance person, because you are ultimately going to have to get them on board with your projects. That's where your funding is going to come from. So don't forget to bring them along on your journey. But yeah, play to people's strengths. That's a great response. If you've got somebody that's passionate about gardening, then you know they can champion your outdoor space, or you know, or the cycling. Make them the champion of how people get to work and starting to think about that. But yeah, using knowledge from outside your organisation, share your knowledge, share your experience, try and take other businesses, try and take at least one other person, one outside person along on that journey with you, and that's how you can, you know, gain from their experiences and what they're doing as well.
Yeah, great advice. And actually, from the FSB's point of view, I come across businesses all day, every day, who are from the sole trader up through the SME into slightly larger businesses. But the collaboration that's been mentioned on the panel here is hugely important. And any of you in the room who are running your own business, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that it's a very lonely space out there. So coming across other individuals or businesses that you can work with and collaborate with is hugely important, not just to alleviate that loneliness feeling and thinking, am I the only one that cares, but also to perhaps share some of the load as well. So that's really, really important. Okay, thank you very much. Some great answers there and some great advice. Now, I've got some specific questions that I really want to go to you individually and see where your organisations sort of sit in with this. So, Tom, can I come to you first? So the Globe Group offers a range of support and services to help all sorts of organisations. But are there any key problem areas which you've identified, and how would you suggest that organisations start to address them?
I think the big one, and I think some of you in this room have obviously come to this conference, will be familiar with, is actually when you go into your organisations, a lot of people say, why does it matter to me? How does this connect to my job role? And I think that's a big challenge that we need to overcome, because obviously everyone here today probably has some interest in the climate agenda or the nature agenda or the environment agenda as a whole. And when you go into your organisation, a lot of people will say, why does it matter to me? How does it connect to my role? But actually, when we look at the statistics, around about 75% of people across the whole country are worried or very worried about climate change. So in their personal lives, people are really concerned about this. And I think it's really important for us to think, actually, how does this connect to your job role? Because as we move into the future, everyone's job is going to need to be a climate job. Just because you're the sustainability person doesn't mean you're the only person that's going to be doing climate things moving forward. If you are in charge of marketing, you need to be thinking about how we have outreach in effective ways. If you're in the construction sector, it's the future of buildings. If you're in transport, thinking about the sorts of transport solutions that are going to be coming forward and what works for your business. And if you're in finance, actually, how are we going to support some of these things going forward? I think that was a really important point that Diane made there. It's actually how can we bring these people along the journey? And there are so many opportunities that can be we can grab hold of, which do have financial benefit as well. So really things that we can drive forward. And this will be different for each organisation, as I said earlier. And it's important to understand what works for you, because just because it works for the neighbour doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you, and vice versa. So I think we really need to start unpacking how everyone can realise their job is a climate job. Because we can see the impacts all around the world. We've seen the devastation that's happened globally over the last few weeks, the flooding that's gone on in Libya, and we know at 1.1 degrees this is the situation we're in. And we need to take much quicker action. But we also need to connect it to our own lives. It's not something separate. It's not something which is disconnected to us as individuals and our workplaces. It's part of what we need to do. And if you've got people that aren't sure about what to do or how it connects their lives, I'd suggest speaking to people in the room downstairs or speaking to some of us later and say, actually, can we be involved with any of the work you're doing? Can people come into our workplace and show us how it connects? Because all of a sudden, once we've had a 10, 15-minute conversation, people start to see the dots connecting and realise that, oh yeah, my job is a climate job, and it's my responsibility, as well as everyone else's in our organisation, to do something here.
Perfect, thank you very much. And Gary, I'd like to come to you next. The voluntary sector can play a crucial role in the net zero transition, but in many cases there are likely to be financial constraints, and I think you've already touched upon that. But given this, what advice would you give to a voluntary sector organisation to ensure that they can maximise the impact without emptying their bank accounts?
So I'm going to partly agree, and then I'm going to partly disagree with the premise of the question. Let me agree first. Yeah, it's tricky when everyone's purse strings, everyone's budgets are really tight. So I would say start within what's within your control to begin with. So things like travel. I know that we as an organisation dithered for years about, we had a sense that staff travel and mileage was probably the biggest thing we could do. You know, we don't make anything. We don't produce an awful lot of stuff, so we don't feel like we have a carbon footprint in that way. But travel felt like a really big thing. We felt like we should be doing something like around teleconferencing, but we never quite got around to prioritising it. COVID forced us to do it, and we've never looked back. So even though in the last 3 or 4 years we've had a 50% increase in our staff team, we are still 40% less mileage than we were pre-COVID because of those patterns that we've maintained, and it's slashed our travel expenses bill at the same time, so it's actually saved us a lot of money. So think about things that are within your control of your organisation. Don't necessarily get too hung up on the thing that's going to save the most carbon straight off. It was referenced earlier, I think, that it's quite tricky, particularly for voluntary organisations, and I suspect this is true of a lot of small businesses as well, around premises and the responsibilities you've got there. Sometimes some of the grant programmes that you get they'll only fund you if you've got a long-term lease arrangement. If there are funders in the room, please start to rethink that. So particularly for the voluntary sector, you are probably going to be in the same premises for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but it's quite likely that you'll just be on a rolling annual licence for that period. So think a bit more about the context of that if you're a funder, because you might just need to take a little bit more risk, and every now and then you might end up funding a bit of retrofitting, and then the person that you funded moves out, but most of the time they probably won't. So I think there's something about that. Procurement's probably the third area. If you do buy stuff, if you do make stuff, just pick something, just start somewhere in that space, and just try and do something more local, more ethical. Build up a partnership with a more local provider of whatever it is, whether it's stationery or marketing material, or whatever. Because there's loads of really great organisations out there, but don't overthink it. Just pick something and start somewhere. I think I would say. Let me just briefly disagree, just to finish. Ooh. So
controversial.
You are going to have to budget for this. You're not going to be able to do it on nothing. So I'd say getting your board on board, if you've got a board of directors, a board of trustees, if you're a community interest company, the directors, get them thinking about this early on and start to introduce it. So we introduced it into its own cost centre, and it was 500 quid. That's all that it was, which for us, I appreciate small organisations, that's still quite a lot of money. But even if you introduce it as 50 quid, introduce it. We've now built that up over the years, and we've secured quite a big investment from our board now, and they're backing to really put something into this. So start somewhere, get people on board, because you are going to have to invest in it longer term, even if there are some cheaper, quicker wins.
Okay, that's great. And actually, just touching on the small business element of that as well, one of the things you've mentioned about premises. So again, we come into contact with businesses every day that actually it's not within their remit to make changes because they are a tenant and the landlord has the control over whatever it is that's going on with the building. But there are small changes that can be made, and actually some of them, as you've touched on there, again, I've worked with businesses that have just put aside a little bit of money and started that change, and it's grown and it's sort of morphed into something else. So that's great advice as well. And Diane, coming to you now. So SBEN offers some great support to organisations to help them on their journey to net zero. Could you tell us a little bit more about the opportunities which are available to members, and if you've got some examples of that positive improvement?
Okay, yeah, so Staffordshire Business Environment Network, it is a network that's free to join, although we're a membership organisation, it doesn't cost you anything to join, so that's the first thing to point out. We offer all sorts of services to our members and other businesses through the work that we do at Staffordshire County Council. We have regular events and networking, so that's an opportunity to come and collaborate and meet other businesses, share best practice, hear what they've been doing and learn from other businesses. So it's not just us telling you how you should be running your businesses and what you're doing. We want you to hear from other businesses that have been doing that. One of our next events is here up at Keele. We do a lot of work with Keele, taking solar to the next level on the 13th of October. A little plug for that one if anyone wants to come along and join us at that one. But yeah, in terms of the tools and support that you can access with your membership, we have a carbon tracker online tool to help you work out what your carbon emissions are and where they are coming from within your business. So that will factor in all your different energy bills, it factors in your staff travel so all of those things can be added into the tracker and it will tell you how much carbon you're emitting. Dewey, one of my colleagues, is doing a session on the carbon tracker at 11:45 if you're interested to find out more. Lots of our members, including TMT, have used it. I was just talking to Liam from TMT downstairs, and he is finding it so useful in capturing all that information. So we'd like you to hear that from the businesses, not necessarily from us, on how great it is to get involved in that. We've been working on energy efficiency support and advice in collaboration with the County Council with various funding streams over the last 7 years. And having an energy audit from your business is a great place to start because it can identify where you can save money off your energy bill. And we have also got grants for some businesses available as well. Up to 50% of the cost of the measures that are recommended can be covered by that grant funding. We've already invested over £2.5 million in Staffordshire business premises through those schemes over the last 7 years, working with over 350 businesses and annually saving over 2,250 tonnes of carbon every year since those installations have gone in over the last few years. So we have more funding available. We've got projects that are ongoing. So come and speak to us today or go on the SBEN website and you can register your interest in that. And that's, you know, it is a really good place to start. Hopefully helps you bring everybody on board if there's a little bit of funding available at the end of that too, and it gets you engaged hopefully with some quick wins for your business as well that everybody can see the benefits of. Lighting's a great example of that because it is such a visible thing in your organisation. You switch to LED lightings, it has a really quick payback, especially if you've had a grant towards it, and everybody's suddenly going, oh, I can see really well in here, so everybody sees that's happened, and it's just a really good visible one to get other people on board with that journey. And we've mentioned carbon literacy training. That's something else that we've got available to businesses across Staffordshire. It's a fantastic one-day training session, but it provides you with so much information and knowledge that helps you to take those other people on that journey with you as well. We've got a lot of our members that have come, they've had 1 or 2 people trained, and then they've gone on to have, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then looking to become a carbon literate organisation themselves. So, yeah, can't recommend that highly enough. And so, hopefully take a look on the website. You'll see recommendations for that. You can access it through Globe, through ourselves. There's lots of local offer, so just take advantage of it while it's there.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I think, again, putting it into the context of small businesses as well, we know as an organisation, and we represent many, many businesses, 160,000 across the UK actually, but you're all things to all men. You're goods in, goods out, payroll, HR, complaints, customer services, you name it, all in one day. And so this agenda is hugely important to you as a business, but I think it was mentioned by you, Tom, at the beginning. Sometimes it's not actually the remit of what you're there for. You're there to do your business, to make money, to be profitable, and to employ your great employers as well. So I think all of the advice that you've heard from the panel here, and also the FSB, we have a sustainability hub on our website, and talking about businesses and picking up from other people's experiences. There's some great case studies on there as well, so you can look at those and see how the smaller businesses have managed to make those small changes that have led to a sort of a big difference in their business. So it's worth having a look at that. So we've got a stand downstairs, so happy to chat with anybody on that. So I think we've got a little bit of time for some Q&A. Is there anybody who has a question? We'd be very happy to try and answer that for you. Or have we stunned you into silence? Usually happens. Any questions? Yes, lady there.
The business that I represent is actually based in West Midlands and Worcestershire. So I would like to know if there's a similar kind of opportunity available through, say, Worcestershire County Council. That's where I'm at.
Diane, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, I can put you in touch with them afterwards if you'd like me to give, but yes, there are energy efficiency audits and grants in the same way. I'm not familiar with their individual programmes, but yeah, I can pass you the contact details for them.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
If there's an organisation who's just starting to look into sustainability and they're a bit overwhelmed by it, what do you think would be the very first step that they should take?
Shall I come to you?
Yeah. Happy to start that one. And there's an activity that I get people to do when we do our green action planning as kind of a first step. And it's kind of an influence mapping thing to start with. So you start to understand actually what can you make a difference on. So we do what's under your direct control, and that obviously varies from business to business depending on what's going on. So it's things like, is energy under your control, is transport under your control, and really understand what you as an organisation can tangibly make a difference on really easily. And that should give you an idea of where you can start thinking about action without getting into some of the really complex stuff which goes out of that, like supply chains and that broader engagement piece. But then beyond that, we also look at what are things that are not under your control but you can influence. So obviously from Vast there, thinking about what are the connections across the local area, how can you influence some of those organisations critically. And a lot of the small businesses that are here today and the organisations that are here actually will have a really, really small individual carbon footprint. And environmental impact, and it's thinking how do we spread the message to other people as well. But definitely would start by just thinking about what can I control, and also just thinking where's the most stress in our organisation as well. If it is struggling to pay energy bills, maybe there's a good place to start there. If we've got direct control of that, and we know this is one of our challenges, are there some solutions that could have a financial benefit and help us see some of those solutions?
But I would suggest, perhaps finding someone from the panel and having that conversation on more of a one-to-one level would probably help you to sort of kickstart that journey. Any more questions? Yes, lady over there.
Hi, yes. The biggest challenge in my business is transport at the moment. So we're a service-based business and we rely on building human connections, and it's very difficult to do that through a screen. We typically got around that by using public transport wherever possible. Now, that's been extremely challenging this year and last year as well, because we need to be at the place that we say we're going to be when we say we're going to be there, and so trains have become more difficult. Are there any clever sort of car sharing, initiatives that anybody's aware of that, at the moment we're just getting our own cars and drive miles to Kent or Yorkshire or wherever it is that we're going, but it would be great to connect with there must be other small businesses that
I'm going to throw it over to you, I think.
So there are some apps already for that sort of thing out there. So car sharing apps. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the one that we've worked with before. But there are things out there. And what I'd actually say is really important with this is we kind of see the urgency of doing all of these actions, but actually having a bit of a long-term think about it as well. We do 2030 is the date we need to cut these emissions in half by, as I said at the beginning of this. How can we think about the measures that go along that pathway? What can we start thinking for 2025? Can you bring in an app immediately? But also, what are the plans for the electrification of a vehicle fleet, for example? Because, as Gary said, we will have to start investing in some of these things as we go forward, but also things are coming down in price as well. So actually having a strategy moving into the short, medium and long term is a really important part of that. And with Burton Albion recently, that's what we've done. We've looked at what are the immediate things that we can solve, the areas we can solve, which areas drive for. So, for example, with them, it's thinking about electric vehicle charging because they've got all people coming in and out all the time. What's the medium-term plans and what's the long-term plans? Because we need this strategy where it encompasses not just the immediate actions, but long-term approaches too.
Perfect. I think we've got time for one more question. Lady at the back.
Hello. My question is very much on the travel and transport side again. I'm in an industry where it's a national role and a lot of our teams were constantly visiting, going to exhibitions and expos and things like this actually. And one of the things that we found is an app called You Smart Thing, which is a sustainability app on travel, and it allows anybody in your organisation to actually find the most sustainable mode of transport to your destination, and it even gives you the CO2 emissions. And by going on a different route or a different type of travel, how much you'll be saving in your carbon footprint. So I think that's a really nice one to maybe look into.
That's great, actually. Thank you for sharing that, and hopefully that the lady there will pick that up as well. Okay, we're coming to the end, and I'm probably getting some funny looks from the side here because we don't want to go over time. So we've got no more time for questions, but as I've said, the panel are around downstairs. We'll be there as well. So if you've got any specific questions you'd like to bring to us, we'll have more time to talk to you then. But before we wrap up, so just to sum up, I'd like each of you to just give us one sentence. Here's your challenge. Just to sum up some of your advice, and go.
I think we know the climate and environmental crises are a moral and environmental imperative, but actually for us in this room it's becoming an economic imperative too. So make sure, if nothing else today, look around this room, find people downstairs that can help you on that journey, because together we can find solutions that work for all of us. So make sure you make the most of the opportunity and find people that can help you on that journey.
Brilliant, thank you. Go.
I'm going to draw together a couple of things that were said. I think if you're a leader in the room, and I don't necessarily mean a chief exec, a chair, a senior manager, a finance director, if you're in a role of leadership, a role of influence, you could be a volunteer and still be in that role. I think there's something about giving permission to your colleagues to make this a part of their job, even though it's not written in their job description. I almost feel like we should all start writing it into job descriptions under that kind of, and anything else sort of phrase that normally comes at the end of job descriptions. One before that, I think we should now put something around and anything to contribute towards a climate emergency. But I think give permission to your colleagues to make it part of their day-to-day.
Great advice. Diane.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. I make time in the day-to-day as well to do that, and give colleagues time if you can to do that. But just get involved, take advantage of the support that's available, and share your journey with somebody else. Don't do it on your own.
Perfect. And I think my closing point for that would be collaborate. Talk to your peers, talk to other small businesses, find out what they're doing. If there's people in your local area, find them, talk to them and see what their interests. We've talked about various things you can do around, green and gardening and travel and bikes and all of that kind of stuff. So just find your tribe that will help you along this journey, and make sure that you talk to them and pick up their vibe and their sort of enthusiasm for it, because I see it every single day in all of the businesses that I come into contact with. Either the desire to do it or they're already doing it, but they just need a little bit of help if they're not on that journey. So that would be my closing point for that. And as I've said, everybody will be downstairs later. There's stands down there. Do come and talk to us all. We'd love to have a chat with you. So all that remains to be said is to thank our panel. So I just want to say a very big thank you to Tom Bedford, to Gary Jones, and to Diane Roberts. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. And thank you very much for joining us this morning. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at some point later on in the day.